Hello and welcome to ITWeb TV at the Security Summit 2024. I'm now joined by Craig Rosewarne, who's the Managing Director of Wolfpack Information Risk. Craig, welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. I know you've been very busy at the summit.
Yes.
And I believe you're also helping us with one of the workshops tomorrow. And I think that's a great topic, but we'll come on to that a little bit later, if that's okay. So let's start. I know one of the tracks that you were kind of running was around SA as a hot target. Why do you think that is? What are the main reasons for us being seen internationally, perhaps, and by cyber criminals as somewhere that's perhaps an easy target?
So, South Africa is now the wealthiest country on the continent in terms of economy. So we're a wealthy country, great infrastructure, lots of assets, but we don't have the great, call it cybercrime defense element at a national level in place, implemented and ready to protect our assets. So we're very vulnerable, which makes it a perfect storm for criminals to gain access to wealth with a low chance of being, caught, arrested at the end of the day. I think that's the main thing I'm seeing, Adrian.
Okay. Something that kind of came to my mind earlier is we've got, and it's not been a great couple of months, but we've got all this kind of connectivity coming into Africa, suddenly from the US, from Europe, from Asia, connecting us and kind of, I guess, enabling a whole billion people who perhaps didn't have the the connectivity before. And suddenly they're all getting online. So I think that's potentially a kind of worry that these people who aren't digitally literate and cyber savvy are suddenly going to go online. And perhaps we have a step ahead. And I know that's the old adage about security is stay slightly better protected than your neighbor.
Yes.
But that's perhaps a concern that maybe as Africa we need to worry about.
Yeah, for sure. In the olden days, we would joke that Telkom was the country's main firewall because they were the monopoly and connectivity was expensive and hard, right? But everyone's now wanting to put pipes into Africa, and it's great. We need it. But it is a massive concern that, you've got so many people coming online. And because South Africa has been quite sheltered, a lot of you can almost create an innocence around a lot of the people.
Yeah.
Trusting, it's our culture, right? And a ripe market for scammers. We've had horrific cases reporting to us, especially on the community side of things. Company incidents is one thing. They've got teams and they've got money to pay for it. But, the NGOs, the individuals, families, teenagers, really, really sad cases.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll come on to some of that later. I think that's a vital piece of the puzzle that needs to be kind of solved. So what do you think are some of the biggest threats and the most kind of common attack methods that you're seeing being sort of played out locally?
So, the big things targeting companies, it's still very much the human element,
Sure.
As much as we try to throw technology, the people are still the weakest link. So it's your social engineering scams who are adapting and, using all kinds of technology to make their phishing emails more believable. We've had a couple of cases now of deep fakes in terms of conning people out of money. You've got phishing now that has grown its own set of legs. We've seen attacks. I got a phone call the other night from a MTN fraud department. One-time PIN received. And I'm in the game full time. I know about these things. But he caught me off guard because he was so professional. I really believe for the first few seconds he was from the FNB fraud department. Did I give permission to this person to just swap my account? And that's what I clicked. But the way he engaged with me, and I still said to him, "Sure, you are good." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You are so good for a fraudster." Immediately put the phone down. They've got, QR codes, phishing attacks, and even SMSs now redirecting you to click on hyperlinks in the SMSs. So, and that's important because many people we might be connected, but not everyone's got computers.
Yeah.
But everyone's got phones.
Yeah.
So it's typically the phone-based attacks, job scams on WhatsApp, for example, working for these, an Amazon or Take-A-Lot type of organizations. And people are desperate for work, got high unemployment risk. So when you look at all these factors, it's the counter of that are the leading scams in the country.
One of the interviews we had earlier today, we were talking about that. I kind of asked about is it the kind of international guys, or is it like, are you seeing attacks from local cyber criminals? And I'm not sure, I'll kind of let you answer that in a second, but I think it was kind of interesting that maybe the local guys have a better understanding of our unique culture in South Africa than perhaps someone sitting in North Korea. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it makes it more believable. I mean, a lot of the numbers are local numbers, but there are spoofing services where you can spoof an international number to make it look like a local number. And of course, so I'd say most of the phone-based SMS, WhatsApp type of things are more locally driven, whereas the email side of things is international. You don't need to have that element to be in the country to do those sort of attacks. So.
Okay. And you mentioned deepfakes earlier, you're kind of seeing a couple of those. Are they kind of local companies that have fallen for deepfakes?
Yes.
And are they locally produced or locally targeted?
Yeah, locally. More than likely locally, probably half of them I would say are locally created.
Okay.
Some are quite unsophisticated, but they still are successful. So I mean, we've seen, we actually did a TV stint with the Devi show, for example, where Devi and one of the ladies from SABC and one of the 94.7 DJs, they actually created deepfake accounts of them promoting these weight loss creams and jellies that you eat, for example. And because they are influencers and they've got a big trusted community, a lot of people ended up paying money to them for these quick fix solutions, and getting very upset when these things weren't working, then going back to
blaming the
celebrities for this. Yeah, so those things can rapidly escalate from cybercrime to physical threats, in terms of dangers to cars getting physical.
Yeah. I mean, now you mention it, I remember there was one maybe less than 6 months ago with Elon Musk, and I think they had Patrice Motsepe, and it was some kind of crypto scam, I suspect. And that's obviously...
Hundreds of people paid millions of rands for those get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah. I think it was someone international. I think it was like Iceland we looked at, but I mean, you guys all know better than us where it kind of came from. Could you give us a couple of examples of cases that you've kind of worked on? I mean, we mentioned the deepfakes ones there. Are there any other cases that you can kind of give us that really kind of, I guess, give the scope of cyber crimes and crimes like the big corporate ones, maybe a public sector one, and then like the person in the community who's kind of been affected?
Yeah, and I think the way that you've asked the question is just to reinforce that everyone, from a pensioner all the way through to a large corporate, is open, right? Money doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as the criminal gets in or where they got it from. So, just thinking off the top of my head now, there's been large-scale incidents where, from a Wolfpack point of view, we've got involved and we've helped investigate those cases, from ransomware attacks, double-pronged ransomware attacks with this data breach, for example, very sophisticated attacks, and having to get onto negotiation sort of degree. And then there is, from a smaller organization, I mean, listen to this, a 4-person organization that helps facilitate mergers and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. They helped a large client for a very sizable amount. They got paid 4 million rand as a fee. And the CEO's email, in fact, the whole company was compromised, and a business email compromise attack. So the wrong email, the invoice obviously was changed, sent to the chief financial officer of the client, and they paid the money into the criminal's account. When they go to report it to the police station, the cops say they weren't the victims. The company that paid the money was the victim, so they have to go and report it, which took another day to go and get that done.
Solved, yeah.
By the time they managed to go to one of the large banks in SA and they froze the money, the next day the monies were released. They were unfrozen, and half the money, 2 million rand, was siphoned off, as an example. So a whole avalanche of issues that took place where this thing could have stopped on so many times, but they were let through, and money was stolen. I can talk about all kinds of cases around harassment and things such as extortion and romance scams through to NGOs, for example, getting taken for large amounts of money, which they can't afford it.
Yeah. It's sad, and I think, that kind of comes on to this kind of bigger cyber awareness thing that the population we need to kind of address with the population. But so then, I guess potentially part of that, what can we as a nation and what can we as corporates and as individuals do to kind of harden ourselves to these cyber attacks and kind of scams and threats?
So the panel session that I chaired this morning, it was really a cry out for, almost using the analogy of voting. We voted. We're now waiting for the various parties to form a coalition. We've done what we can. There's nothing much more we can do. But I said to the security community, we've got skills, talents, all kinds of assets sitting here. Let's pull those together. And we highlighted various community initiatives that are on the go at a country level, at a company level, and then also at a community level, the vulnerable communities. And there's lots of things. So, for example, one of the things that I've done now is I've written a book. It's my second book. It's called Cybercrime Self-Defense. And I am very happy to give away digital copies of this. It unpacks 40 different types of scams, how to spot the warning signs. If you realize you're under attack, how to secure your environment. If you fall victim, what should you do? And we also bring in open source intelligence tools to help in those investigations, which are easier ones for the average person to actually use.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing where you can actually take that book, people can go out and go and talk to parents, schools, use it to protect or raise awareness in your own communities. Think about WhatsApp groups or schools that your children go to. We could all break up and make quite a big difference just using that as a teaching guide, as an example. There's another initiative that we're working with Google. We receive funding from them and Impact Amplify for what we're calling Project Cobra, which is all around building a platform to investigate cybercrime. So there, for example, we're going to train up cybercrime investigators. We've got a 3-phase training program. Think about young grads looking for work.
Perfect.
Think about people willing to volunteer their time. So that's the one thing, is to develop skills, because they're very fragmented at this stage. Good skills, but all over the place. Bring them together, use one platform. We've got a team that's going to investigate, that is already investigating stuff, but we can open up the platform for others to investigate. We come across a cell phone or an IP address. Another case, we can start to join linkages and work together as a community in terms of investigations. And really, Adrian, there's a couple of other initiatives. If we had more time to unpack these things, we can actually talk about.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the other things at a company level, where we're seeing the fruits of collaboration in the banking sector, for example, with Sabric.
Yes.
Comric has now been established for the telecom sector.
Yeah.
And you've got other ones for other sectors. We've actually now mandated or made a call out to bring the mining and the manufacturing sectors together, because they're not coordinated. And these are large sectors. And we're also going to then focus on, because if you look at those typical operations, they're very reliant on operational technology, SCADA, RCS control systems, right? So there could be a special focus on that. So we've had, two of the people on the chat who are part of these organizations, a number of our clients and our communities. We will start to bring them together to start looking at common threat vectors, threat intelligence that we can work through, even in terms of assisting each other in terms of incident management. But there needs to be a maturity in terms of dealing with that. Put your competitiveness aside and let's form a lager almost in terms of helping and defend. Someone else asked me about what about the medical arena, which is also a critical one.
Sure.
But we've got to start, we've got to start somewhere. So that's something there, for example. And, so that's, I've talked about community, I've talked about company. At a government country level, I think where we need to make the biggest input is with the South African police services.
Yeah.
I went into a police station I live in Fairland area, on Saturday to get some documents certified. And as I walked in, I saw posters about, cybercrime is a crime, report it, and a process to report. And I thought, wow, that's I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
And I talked to the sergeant behind the desk, and I asked him about, how many cases get reported, thinking he's going to say 1 or 2 a month. And he said to me, no, this is, this is the biggest crime that gets reported. We get on average 5 to 7 cases a day, cybercrime cases being reported. Now, those are only the ones being reported. You can imagine how many don't get. And multiply that by the number of stations, and to give you a sense of what is actually happening just below the surface.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's been fantastic. Craig, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Craig Rosewarne, Managing Director of Wolfpack Information Risk.